Scott Carpenter again. So I wanted to talk about something, or a couple things. But the first thing is I wanted to discuss the subject of how intelligent, how smart are the Sasquatch, and how does that play into their behavior and what they do. I'm constantly asked, I don't understand. I don't understand if they're these intelligent beings. Why do they whoop and knock on trees and lick trail cameras and do all these silly things? And it doesn't make any sense. If they're that intelligent, why do they communicate that way? And I've experienced their intelligence. I've experienced their abilities. So I know, that these displays are not always what they seem. And I think you have to kind of like, it's all the old worn out sayings, but it's playing chess, 3D chess, or it's they're 10 moves ahead, or that sort of thing. But in reality, it really is. And this is my opinion based on my experience of over 10 years of research and all, my standard disclaimer, my research and everything that I've been that I have personally experienced, and those around me have experienced and told me about in my and so. But when I think about why they do what they do, and it gives a lot of people trouble. A lot of people have for some reason they get stuck on that, and some of this I think is misdirection. I think I'm starting to look at these guys like they're, I wouldn't call it a military operation, but I would say that the way they structure things and the hierarchy that they have in their family groups, and then how they behave themselves, there's definitely a pecking order. There's definitely a structure, a very rigid structure, and there's discipline. That's obvious. There's extreme discipline within the ranks of the Sasquatch about their behaviors, what they can do, what they can't do. Just through trial and error, we've discovered a rule set about them. And so it's almost like, the old rule, no uncoded communications in enemy territory. And that's a rule, that's a military rule. It's used, during warfare, when you're engaged with the enemy on the battlefield or otherwise. And when your enemy is listening to you, then there are, everything's coded. Even if it's on an open channel, what you're saying is coded. And a lot of the communications that I see from the Sasquatch front, the Sasquatch actually talking one to another, or in some ways communicating with us, it's always coded. It's not, it's frustrating. It's like, well, why don't they just talk to us? Can't they talk to us? Well, you say they have language, but they don't talk to us. Well, they don't talk to us because they choose not to, and or there's a rule set that they can't, and there's a hierarchy that enforces that. And obviously the enforcement method is pretty brutal. Whatever whatever the method is they use, whether it's the threat of death, or something close to it, because Sasquatch have been seen running from human beings, literally, running from us, and where they could rip us to shreds, and there's nothing really from us to fear. They will many times just run and try to get away from us, or try to scare us off. But in the confrontation, they're running away. So going to pause right here and see what the text was. Sorry. Okay, nothing I need to be worried about. All right, so there. I mean, this conversation's going 50 different directions, but it's all coming back around to their intelligence and what they're doing. And there's, with the, I think all their communications is coded. What we are thinking is low intelligent, lower primate, whoops and knocks and whistles and things of that nature, in my humble opinion, is coded communications. They're in enemy territory. They're surrounded by human beings. They need to communicate with one another. And everybody says, well, why can't they use mind speak? Good question. I don't know. In my opinion, not all of them have the same abilities based on their genetic purity. So some can, some can't. There may be a limitation to it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just know they do communicate because I've seen them do it, and others have too. They do communicate through knocks, whistles, and other forms. And this form of communication also may be a form of deception, because they're trying to give the appearance that they are what they're not. A little psyop operation and they're feeding into. I think they're aware of how they're viewed by human beings and the skepticism, and I think they are smart enough to play into that to keep that myth going, because that works in their favor. And so I know it's blowing some people's minds. They're not that smart. They don't watch TV. I don't think they have to watch TV to figure out, how they're currently viewed in society, and how humans, as a general, look on them. I don't think it would take a rocket scientist to figure that out. And how playing into that myth, playing into that we're the boogeymen type of behavior would aid and help them remain hidden and get it where people wouldn't take them so seriously. And so, because the more and more I think about it, and I'm trying to apply logic to this, and why they do what they do, and why they sometimes what they do, these strange behaviors, I think that's what we're looking at. No coded, uncoded communications. Play into, so they're playing into our, general public's, their conspiracy, they're the boogeyman, they don't exist, it's a figment of our imagination. So they do these things that helps that, reinforce that. Because when we report them, we report what? Odd behavior. Well, they lick my trail cameras. Well, why in the world would something lick a trail camera? That's crazy. Why? I don't believe that. They, and other stuff. Well, they were whooping. They were making whooping noises and knocking on trees. And, well, why would an intelligent being need to do that? Sometimes we do, catch them talking to each other in a language we can't understand it, but they are communicating, and that happens. But most of the time, most people experience these things that one would consider to be not so sophisticated, and so when that person, hey, I had an encounter and they were, and I heard wood knocks, and I saw one that screamed and yelled and pounded his fist and run off. That sort of behavior is like, people are just, that doesn't make sense. You must have seen a bear, And so I think, we need to expand our thinking and think beyond, we got to get out, here again is another one, war I'm saying, out of the box. But we do. We've got to get out, and we've got to look at these other things. My daughter at one time dated a fellow that was a corpsman, and he was attached to some special operations people, and he said, and I've relayed this before, but you know, many times you'll find one single pristine Sasquatch footprint, you know, like in the mud or in loose or wet soil where you can leave a footprint, and otherwise hard packed soil. So it's like, you know, and so you have this one pristine footprint, and then no more. There won't be a trackway. There'll just be one. And I've found 3 or 4 like that, just one footprint, one. And it's like, you know, you'll be going up a dirt trail or an old roadbed, and you know, there's a mud hole, and right not in the mud hole, but usually just right outside the mud hole where the ground's soft enough for a good print. Boom, there's a solid print, one. And you're like, why in the world would an intelligent being put a footprint where everybody can find it right out in the wide open? And so when I told him that, he said, well, that's a code. That's a code. He said they've got a code around that. They're communicating to the other people in their group where they're at, or something of that nature. And I said, what do you mean it's a code? And he said that when they were behind enemy lines or on an op, they would do a pre-agreed, they'd get together and they say, okay, here's what we're going to do. You know, we're going so many clicks in. When they would do that, when they'd sleep at night, there were no tents or anything like that. They literally would crawl under blowdowns, under rocks, or wherever they could, you know, find a place for shelter. They would only use the foliage that was in the area, and they wouldn't build anything. In other words, if there was a tree that had fallen over, they'd crawl under the tree. I mean, they were trying to be that covert. And so, but he said what we would do, we would say, okay, you know, we're going to, you know, let's say the main group, they'd split up, and the first group would tell the second group, look, what we're going to do is, you know, we're going to find a place to bivouac for the night. And so when you find one pristine boot print, and that's all you'll see is one boot print, then go 10 meters, look to, and on the right side of the trail you'll see a rock, and whichever way that rock is orientated means that's the direction we're at, and we're 40 meters inside the road. And he was like, that's what the Sasquatch are probably doing. They're like, there's some, you know, from this footprint, either backwards or forwards, there's some marker they've agreed upon. It could be anything. It could be a tree limb. It could be an X. It could be off the trail, just off the trail. It could be anything. And but that, you know, that tells the other members of the clan, I've gone left, I've gone right, I've gone here, I've gone there. And then it's, you know, the light bulb started going off. You know, I'm at the point where I just don't buy their act anymore. I just don't. I haven't bought their act in several years. I think they're extremely intelligent. Like I said, I think a lot of this is just an act. It's psyops. It's them just playing along. It's, you know, today in the mountains with my girlfriend, sitting by a stream, just enjoying things. I had to go to the bathroom, so I walk up this little stream, and you know, where nobody can see me, and go in. I'm gone 5 minutes. As soon as I walk out of sight and am gone, a rock comes flying through out of the woods at her. And then, you know, and the dog, something alerts the dog, and the dog barks once. And then when I come back, she's like, you know, something threw a rock at me. Of course, there's no, you know. And so they do little crazy stuff like that. Almost, you know, to goad you, just, you know, yeah, this is your girlfriend. Yeah, we know who you are. You know, as soon as you get outside, we're going to zing a rock at her, kind of freak her out. And I really think that, you know, that's why they did it. You know, and that sort of thing, you know, is what they do. They're always playing. I think they're messing with us. They're just, you know, they're being silly. They've got a sense of humor, and they're messing with us. And you know, I also think it could be part of this no uncoded communications. There's a rule set somewhere, and they can't overtly communicate with us. And all through my research, when they communicated, it's always been covertly. I've said this before. When they communicate with me, or would, through a stack of rocks, whatever it was, sticks or whatever, they would do things only I would know. And they've done it multiple times. And like the thing that they would do with me is this 3-in-1 pattern. In other words, if I'd put 5 rocks out on a flat piece of marble, they would scoop 1 rock off, flip it off, and they would put 3 rocks together and 1 apart. And they did this pattern over and over and over. Okay. You know, what is this? Is this, there's 3 of them, 1 me, it's the 3-in-1, something with the Holy Spirit and God. You know, we kept going around and around. But what happened was, here at my house, on the railing, they had started coming taking the dog food, and we've been trying to document that. And so I got some candy bars, which they, you know, at the feeding station, they like Snickers bars. And so I laid out, 8 or 9 on the rail, 8 or 9 candy bars. Went to bed, you know, did our thing, came back out. And the next day, all the candy bars were knocked off the rail except for 4. And there were 3 pushed together and 1 by itself. Now, anyone else saw that, and if I said, well, that means they just sent me a message, it was them, they'd say, you're a lunatic. But see, I knew. They'd established that pattern. And they've done it multiple times. They've done it with candy bars in the backyard a couple of years ago, right at the edge of the property line, because I've done one of them right at the edge of the property line, and it's no joke. I've got pictures of it. They had taken 4 sticks, 4 limb falls, you know, and you got sticks in your yard. Each stick was the same length. 3 sticks were side by side, and then about 10 to 12 inches away was the 4th one. And I'm sorry, but that's not a coincidence. And so that's what I'm talking about, their intelligence. That's what I'm talking about, coded communications, and how they interact. And they have this very complicated rule set that they understand and abide by and go by. And we just, you know, we see through the glass darkly. We don't, you know, we don't have the keys to the kingdom. We don't have the primer. We don't really have hardly anything. And so I'm of the mindset that they're extremely intelligent, and that most of the things that they do are to mess with us, or to misdirections, to throw us off. It's to give us the impression that there's something they're not, and on purpose. And you'd say, well, what's the end game here? What's the motive? You know, I hadn't been able to sit down and ask one, but it seems to me pretty logical. The motive is to keep, you know, is to help keep them hidden, is to help keep them in that conspiracy theory, only kooks look for us type of situation. I think they're at that level. And then that brings up the other thing I want to talk about. And I've thought about this a lot. And, you know, especially based on my research and the fact that many government entities know they exist, that the Native Americans call them a tribe, had treaties with them, traded with them, you know, had wars with them. In other words, they were, you know, the Native Americans, they were here and they were active, and they saw them on a regular basis. It wasn't like it is now. And I'm wondering, part of me just wonders if back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, there wasn't a treaty struck with the Sasquatch Nation between the United States of America and the Sasquatch. And there are many reasons why you'd say, you guys, you know, we're going to leave you alone. We're not going to hunt you. You know, basically, we're going to let you do your thing in the woods. You live your life. You know, you live your subsistence life. You lay low. We'll try to help cover things up when people see you. But for the most part, you know, the deal is, you guys don't bother anybody. You guys hide and do your thing in the woods. Don't have any contact with with people. And if you do that, then we'll leave you alone. And the more I think about it, I'm not 100% there's a treaty, but I'm getting around 60-65% that there's some sort of agreement between the federal government or factions within the federal government and the Sasquatch. You can call me a conspiracy nut, and who cares? Because something's going on, and something's going on that when you start seeing these things that defy logic and don't make any sense, sometimes the only thing that does make sense is they're almost acting like they have an agreement with someone. And while I think there's there's a spiritual element to this for sure, and yes, they fear God, and they have that rule set they have to obey, but I think it goes deeper than that. And you would say, well, why in the world would the federal government want to hide them? Well, number one, they're giants, and giants go buck the narrative of Darwinism and all kinds of other things. It throws a monkey wrench into the reality that has been built for us. And they're basically uncontrollable, really. I mean, in order to really find them and track them down, you need military grade type equipment, and you need a military armament. You need 50 cows, and you need FLIR, and you need to be able to rapidly move and find them. You need satellite imagery, all the things that the military has. And just really recently, not even 70s, 80s, 90s, the technology was there, but it wasn't perfected. Now I'd say you could hone in on them pretty quickly if they appear somewhere and start doing some stuff, or you needed to track them down, because they can't hide from FLIR. That's one thing they can't hide from, is forward. FLIR stands for forward-looking infrared, and that light spectrum they can't hide from. Even when they cloak, they're still visible in the infrared spectrum. So infrared cameras will pick them up. So that's something to chew on and to think about. Do these guys have some sort of treaty? And there may be some tribes that have the treaty and some that don't. And when was it signed? I don't know. It may have been signed in the 1800s. I don't know. I do know, based on newspaper accounts and reports, that up into the early 20th century, they were regularly seen and regularly reported. They were called wild men. And David Pilates wrote a book. There's other books. The Sasquatch. There's thousands, literally thousands of newspaper articles. And it seems up to about the late 30s, it was just known there were wild men out there and they existed. And then I think when I put this forward in my book, I think part of this was when we started moving from from farming and agriculture to more of a industrialized city dwelling type population, that people just forgot, the mass psyche just forgot about the wild men. And then when our relatives, when our uncles and our grandparents and whoever that still lived on the farm would see them and talk to them about it, the educated city dwellers would, oh, that's crazy. There's no such thing as a Sasquatch. You didn't see anything. Of course, those people aren't going to say anything because they don't want to be made fun of, and they know what they saw, and they don't want to, they just don't want the trouble of it, so they just keep their mouth shut. So, that's kind of how this Sasquatch thing is gone. And like I said, I'm seriously wondering if there wasn't some sort of agreement reached, somewhere in the 1800s, maybe even after the turn of the century, with them, to go low key and stay outside. And it's something that to think on. And I'm investigating the best I can. So I treat it like that's probably top secret, deemed national security stuff, and trying to get for you that would be difficult. But there might be I'm trying to think of to figure that out. So hope I gave you some pretty deep dive, pretty higher end stuff to deal with here on the Sasquatch thing. Thoughts about how intelligent they are, and is there a treaty with them? Why they're staying, why they're staying hidden, why they avoid humans, and display the behavior they do. So I hope that was enjoyable and enlightening. And y'all be careful out there. Till next time.